Marina. She's the scriptwriter behind a Best Unproduced nominated script we've got at our festival in Berlin for 2017 called Lunar Flight. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Welcome to our festival.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Okay, thank you. As I explained a moment, if you could just tell us a bit about yourself and just give us a brief synopsis about the script.
Okay. So like you said, my name's Marina. I'm 26.
Where are you from? Sorry, where are you?
Germany.
You are
actually.
German, aren't you?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Not that it has any relevance, I just thought I'd ask.
Yeah, people keep asking that actually, so because
your accent isn't strong, is it?
Yeah, like I've studied a year in Ireland, film, actually, so
okay.
that's like a huge part of my background. That was like I finished studies about a year ago, have a master's degree in film.
Because I can hear a little bit of, honestly, there's something there. This one, I was struggling with your accent a little bit, yeah?
Yeah, it's probably this really weird mixture of a little bit of Irish, a little bit of English, and a little bit of German, so and that's all feeds in. And
So you're in Southern Ireland, I guess?
I was in Dublin at Trinity College.
Oh, right, okay,
Yes.
a very good college.
It was great to actually get in there, and like the course was very inspiring. We were just a really small group of people, and everybody just brought so much background knowledge already to the course, so you had really great discussions. And
Wasn't that Oscar Wilde's college?
yes, it was.
It was, wasn't it? Wasn't he the one that, we're going off piece deal, stuff. Wasn't he the one that allegedly attached electrodes to the door handles? I don't know if that's the one. Might be someone else that he touched and obviously electrocuted. I might be thinking.
I haven't heard about that, but I wouldn't be surprised. There are tons of stories in Trinity College, like from all over the centuries.
So how? Trinity. I always think Trinity up there with Oxford and Cambridge and Ivy League colleges. So how on earth did you? Let's tell it like it is. It's a tough college to get into. How did you? What was the criteria to get into?
Well, you just had your grades needed to be good enough, basically, and then you also had to write like a short sort of motivation letter and give some examples of what you've done so far with regards to essays. So you put all that together and hand it in and see what happens in a way.
Go like that. Yeah. And did you say you've got a PhD as well?
No, I haven't.
You're studying for that at the moment. Oh, right. Don't say just. That's still very, very good. So don't. Did you say you're taking it? I thought you said something about the PhD as well.
Well, I was sort of thinking about it, but right now I'm just more focusing on the industry. So let's see what's going to come in a way.
So you're in Dublin. Must have been a great time.
It was wonderful.
Would you go back?
I'd totally. If I had a chance, I definitely would go back there and. Just like I love the city. It's like full of stories in a way. I do like places like that.
Yes, I mean it's not just as me mentioned about Oscar Wilde, but of course there's
Samuel Beckett, for example.
Yeah.
Then James Joyce.
Ulysses. Was that James Joyce? Ulysses. Was that his?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, of course.
So you really and I think he has that phrase in his book somewhere that you can't really walk through Dublin without passing any pub, and it's true. Have
you actually read? I don't know anyone that's actually read Ulysses.
No, I haven't. But I had a few. One of my best friends over at Trinity College had, and so he was sort of telling a little bit about it. And I'm still I'm playing with the thought of or with the idea of actually reading him at one point. But I know that's very dense. So I would need some really me time to actually go into it and stay with it, basically.
So sorry, I do this all the time. Like I say, I've gone off piece, but I'm always fascinated by people's backgrounds and how they've got to where they are.
Yeah.
So we'll go on to Lunar Flight, but is this your first stab at a script, or have you done others?
That's actually my first ever script. I have been working at the same time at another one that in a way fed into that one, but it never really sort of finished it up. So that's really the first finished little script, basically, though I've been sort of writing since I was 13.
And can you try and explain, because I know writing a book, one script are radically different, because you've got to explain in someone's spoken word something you could, not quite easily, that's patronising, but more easily perhaps put into a feeling in a book. What I'm trying to say is, you've got to let someone explain how they feel rather than just writing it, haven't you? So it's all in the dialogue, is I guess what I'm getting at.
Yeah, that's the funny thing, because
how difficult is that?
I think it's actually quite difficult. I think you have, in a way, you have to know your character way better for writing a script than for sort of writing a book, because when you write a book, you can always kind of go into it and like sort of explain what's going on in the character.
Yeah.
And with a script, you have to show it basically in a way, and you just and you use dialogue to show it. So you don't have a narrator usually in the back saying, he's just right now he's saying that because like his emotions are like that or something.
Yeah, well, it's very easy for me to write down John is feeling sad, for instance.
Exactly.
But you've got to get John to explain how he's feeling. And
exactly. I guess so I think I really do, like, since I've been studying film at Trinity College, I really listen a lot closer to dialogue when I'm watching something, because I think I really admire that sort of talent to be able to find the right words and for each character, and also not to be too on the nose in a way. I mean, that's a huge issue, that if you really don't know what you want to talk about, you get into stereotypes very easily, I think.
You're the expert. So, could you try and explain not the difference? I kind of know the difficulty of writing a story as opposed to writing an actual. Because, as I said a moment, they're worlds apart, aren't they? Or perhaps I should ask you what made you decide to write a script. Would I be right in guessing you hadn't really thought about it? Was it always storytelling you wanted to do? Did the script writing come later, or is it always script writing you wanted to do?
No, actually, like I think what I really want to do is telling stories, and I'm very curious about the different ways of telling a story.
Right.
So, as I said, I've been writing like more lit sort of novel writing things since I've been 13, though I never really finished up anything. I've been working with photography. I've been doing a little bit of film production. I've been writing the script. So I'm really like what I'm really interested in is how can you tell a story, and what's the best way to tell it, and how can you maybe even make different media work for you in a way. So like this kind of working at the interface of combining different media and bringing them together and then create a story out of it. That's actually what fascinates me, and that's also a reason why I'm kind of really love trying out different ways of telling a story. So for me, it was like a great opportunity that I got during the course to actually get into screenwriting a little bit, and kind of getting to know it and learn the basics of it, and then kind of trying out myself. And that story that was just like one idea just suddenly popping into your head.
Okay, so this is where did this come? Sorry, what's the story about, and where did the idea come from?
Okay, so the story is like, if I would have to put it like in one sentence without telling you the end, I would say it's about like a little girl trying to save her robot friend by flying to the moon, and as it usually is, it all turns out very differently towards the end.
Yeah, a bit like life, really.
Exactly. So, basically, I mean, if I'm going to tell you the end.
No, don't tell me. I'm intrigued to know where it came from. But did you say it just came to you one day, the story?
Yes, I sort of was like sitting, like, basically I was sitting in the classroom and being like, your thoughts wandering away from like what the teacher's telling you right now, and then like it just like popped into my head, like that the sort of I'm usually kind of rather sort of starting out with a question, like with what if there's this little girl that wants to go to the moon but she can't because, and that's how it sort of kind of started out in a way, and then I knew how it's going to end, and I sort of just worked from there.
Oh, so you had the ending first, and then work forwards, I guess.
Yeah, I had the ending, and then I kind of just started writing it. It was also like the first draft was like really quickly done. I mean, it's a short script, but I basically wrote it in an evening, because it's just like I loved the idea, and I just went with it, and it just like kind of flew out of me, basically, which is rare to be honest, like for me.
So which draft is this? How many have you done?
Well, that's sort of basically...
And I'm assuming you're still working on it, of course.
Well, I still, like, I actually read through it again this morning, and I actually did have new ideas. I was like, oh, we should change that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's probably, like, that's the thing. It's like, things like that, stories are always going to be a work in progress, I think. I met so many people already today who were like, I handed it in, but I already have done changes again. So it's always like it's quite usual in a way. And I think that's about like the 4th or the 5th draft.
And when you're sitting down, let's assume you're in your house or whatever room or whatever, and you're about to write that first. It's the first line, I think. I haven't got a clue, but I imagine the very first line you've got to write on a blank sheet of paper. Once you've done the first line, and I don't know where the first line comes from, I suppose what I'm trying to get at is, does it get easier as you go on? Once you start the writing, does it seem to flow?
It depends a lot on what you're writing. I mean, with that one, it was basically really kind of very, like, it just flowed mostly. So I could really write it kind of just steadily through in a way. But I also had things where I sort of write a paragraph, and then when, you know, for me, like a story is full of beginnings in a way, because you have a thought or one idea in your head, or a scene or a sequence, and you know how that's going to play out, and you tell about it. But then you have to start again with a new idea or a new sequence or a new scene or whatever. So you always have this sort of beginning moment in a way where you have to put this first sentence in. So there are always going to be a little bit of breaks and pauses, and then you might also go back and be like, okay, I really have to rework that sentence or that dialogue or that line. So it's that's, I think, why it's never really finished in a way. You always find new little moments you still could work on.
And is there anything you hate about writing? Now, it sounds a bit counterintuitive because obviously you love writing, but I love, I don't know, classic cars, for instance. But there's things about classic cars that really annoy me. You know, they break down all the time, for instance. So I guess the question is, you're writing sometimes and you're working through it. Is there any point you think, you know what, this is just painful? There's things about it might be about your own personality, I don't know, but is there things you find really difficult to get on with when you're actually writing?
I mean, I'm quite an impatient person, I think. So from
Impatient?
Impatient,
right,
yes.
Okay.
So I like when you do actually have that moment and you're sort of missing that first sentence and you're missing it for too long, it gets a little bit frustrating. Or there's a scene where you have the feeling you just can't get right and you try again and again, and I'm usually not up for trying again and again, so maybe you also kind of pause with the whole project for like several months because there's a moment where you just got stuck, basically. So I'm not a big fan of getting stuck, I suppose, but so I don't really like that.
And is there a book that you've read, I'm sure there's hundreds of books you've read, but one that you wish you had written? Or a story?
Ooh.
And that's a bit of a tricky question. It's a bit like asking me your favourite film, but I'm trying to avoid that.
I can tell you. I mean, I can tell you who I admire in a way. So there's this one person called Diana Gabbard, and she's like an American author.
Right.
And
she's current, I assume she's.
Yes, she's current. And well, what I really like or admire about her books is that she's doing great research. So like what she's basing her stories on is really very, very well researched, and she still is able to sort of feed it in with lots of humor. So it's on the one hand it's a very entertaining read, and you still have the feeling you get something out of it. And learn a little bit. So that's sort of, I do admire those authors who can actually kind of merge entertainment with...
Fact or fiction, I guess.
Yeah, basically in a way, with actually bringing people like to have new ideas for themselves or learn new knowledge.
I know what you mean. I read the book, the actual book of The Martian. Have you seen the Ridley Scott film? Have you read the book?
No, I haven't yet. It's
but
on my list.
The guy that wrote Mark, I can't remember his surname now, but he really researched everything about could someone that was stranded on there with the right material actually survive? And the answer was yes, they could. Okay, some scientists have said, yeah, okay, one or two things a little bit. Overall, he'd really researched it well. So that's why when you watch the film, again, I don't know if you've seen the film, and it's, well then, it's basically, it's factual. And I love those kind of things. And I think you're absolutely right. When someone has researched it to, I mean, someone like Dan Brown, it's a load of old hogwash, for instance, you know, and all this stuff that he writes, although it's very popular. But I kind of wonder how much of it is actually research, and I'm sure he does, but my feeling with someone like that is, have they really researched it enough? And I kind of think, I don't buy into it really. For someone like that with The Martian, you saw, yeah, I was 99% sure that he'd really researched it. So, and that kind of adds, there's me going on a bit here, but adds a level of sophistication to the storytelling, doesn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. And also it's in a way a level of familiarity, because like you can relate way more to things you kind of have met before in a way, or when other people say like, this is science, you know, if you really get, if somebody tells you that this is a fact, I think it's way more easy for you to make a coherent story as a reader in your head in a way. So, yeah.
And so I mean, I know ultimately this is, well, I'm guessing what you want to do is write screenplays or write books, write stories. But I mean, you could have gone on to anything, research or teaching. But what made you think, no, this is definitely what my thing is, what I really want to try and do? I mean, is there a point in your life you were at a crossroads, or was it always going to be this?
No, it's actually not like it was always gonna be this. Or like I said before, I mean, the main thing for me is like being able to tell stories, and this is one way I do enjoy a lot. So I definitely hope I have the chance to go on writing screenplays. There are a few ideas like kind of flying around in my head already.
I mean, you're pretty happy with it, I guess. You must be pretty happy. I know you said you're working through drafts, and pretty much everyone I speak to that would speak to that writes a script or screenplay, truthfully, most of them will always go and amend it. And I know that because I speak to them all the time. So you're not unusual when you say, actually, okay, I've had a few ideas, when I might adjust it. Truly, all the people I've spoken to that write are always the same. They're always tweaking it because something will happen. And I mean, it's like making a film, and making a director's cut. I spoke to someone earlier. You know, even filmmakers like Ridley Scott or Steven Spielberg or whatever, they will always, not always, they often look at their work and go, you know what, I might adjust this. And so you're not alone, and I think there's nothing wrong with that.
No, definitely not.
It's just human nature, isn't it?
I think change, and it's also, I think it relates a lot to how you yourself develop. Because like every time you come back to it, your life has been developing and you have made new experiences. And even if I don't think it's like you consciously like feed those into that, but I think your way of seeing the world changes, and then that reflects in the changes you make in the script.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's always going to be sort of, and that's also a thing that I think is very fascinating about telling stories, because it's always. On one hand, it's sort of always going to reflect the author and the changes he's making in his life and in his story. But on the other side, that also is the same for the reader in a way. Because like I think when you go back to a book and reread it after a few years, you will like see it in a very different perspective than you have read it when you have read it the first time, for example. So
definitely, and I think that's definitely, and I think that's the same with any novel you read. I mean, I picked up books years later, and books I thought were really good, and I've gone back and thought, well, actually, that's not that brilliant, because often you might look at something through rose-tinted glasses, and I'm not saying always the case. When I've picked up novels that have gone, they're just as good as I remember, but I've picked up ones and gone, oh, that's a bit clunky, or it's not quite as. Because you change and you develop. And
years later, you're actually absolutely excited about it, maybe.
yeah, absolutely, yeah. You know, I mean, I've read, even before those turned to the films, years and years ago, I was in my mid-teens, I remember reading The Lord of the Rings, and that's a long time ago. And I remember thinking then how epic, incredible it was. Then it was unfilmable because you just didn't have the technology. And that's an example of a book, that's never really lost its power. I mean, if I pick it up now, I've picked it up. I might read it once a year, and I've read it quite recently, and it's fantastic. It's an amazing, for me, a body of work. I mean, it might not be to your taste, but the point I'm trying to make is it's still a great story. And yet others have picked something and gone, God, that's terrible, you know, what did I think? It's sort of shit, you know. But that's just, that's just people changing. But That's it. Fantastic. Thank you very
Okay.
much. Thank you.
Thank you too.